Welcome to the Dire Gentleman channel. Ooh. I'm Guso Spookarella.
And I'm Addison Peacock, and I don't need to change my name because it already sounds like a character from this show.
Yeah, you are already like a very prevalent horror person too.
Da-na-na-na.
Unlike myself, who only moonlights as one. Speaking of moonlight, we've got werewolves, we've got sirens, we've got a family of creeps of various sources.
We got creepy creatures, we've got goths, we've got pastel werewolves, we've got so much to love.
It has been a hot minute since I consumed any kind of Addams Family media, and I'm so glad that I was recommended Netflix's Wednesday, because I had a great time with it.
I love the Addams Family, particularly the 90s Addams Family movies. Specifically, and Gus has heard me talk about this with Henry as well, the Addams Family Values was one of those movies that as a kid I watched it over and over and over and over and over again until my parents were like, please, we cannot watch this again right now. We need a break. We need a break from the Addams Family Values. So Christina Ricci's Wednesday Addams is the definitive one to me. So imagine my surprise and delight upon starting Netflix's Wednesday when I saw she.
Yeah. I'm so glad she was in this. It was such a neat nod to see her interact with Jenna Ortega throughout this, pass the torch.
It did make me feel a million years old when teenagers on Twitter were like, oh, you guys, the redheaded teacher from Wednesday played Wednesday in the 90s. And I'm like, I'm a million years old and I'm going to crumble into dust.
Oh my God. You know you're a 90s kid when you're currently in a crypt.
Just watching myself crumble into dust. But
yeah.
I didn't have any high expectations for this show. I'm very disillusioned with the body of work of Tim Burton. What I didn't know going into the show is that he is not as heavily creatively involved as I expected him to be, which I think is to the show's benefit.
I think it kind of shows because it doesn't have that typical Tim Burton style over substance. Mm-hmm. It really plots itself well, like an actual mystery.
Yes, the writing is pretty solid. I like a compliment sandwich. I actually really enjoyed this show. First of all, I'll front load and say that for all of its many flaws, I really enjoyed this show, and I think it laid a really good foundation for what could be an excellent second season if it learns from the things that worked and does more of those and does less of the things that didn't work.
I think the biggest thing in this show's favor that really ties it all together
is it that Jenna Ortega is a perfect superstar?
No, she is excellent at acting, but the version of Wednesday Addams that she portrays and the way that character is written, it brings everything together. Not to say that the ensemble cast is weak. We'll get to them. I love them. But this character is such an elevating protagonist.
I love her. I think she's so much fun. The casting was absolutely fundamental to the success of this show. Jenna Ortega's Wednesday Addams is everything I would have wanted from it. It's so tuned into, I think, what people really love about her kind of off-putting quality, her sort of social awkwardness, her the darkness, but she still has this kind of soft heart she hides. And it's just things that I, as a kid who was a creepy kid who gravitated really hard toward the Christina Ricci Wednesday Addams from the 90s, they've given her all these varied interests, the fencing and combat, and I love specifically her fancying herself this detective writer is very delightful to me.
They've made her believably feel like a Renaissance woman who wants to, in the Machiavellian sense, sort of be at the top of the social food chain and kind of rule through fear rather than love. But that's a crucial part of her character because it also informs a lot of her character flaws. She wants to be feared rather than loved, but in her establishing character moment in the first episode, we see that her biggest act of cruelty we see on screen in that pilot episode is motivated because she wants to defend the weak, her little brother Pugsley.
Well, the thing about Wednesday that I really love and feels very grounded and very human to me, it's very teenage, is that she wants to be a lot tougher than she is. She keeps people at a distance because she doesn't feel kinship with a lot of her peers, but also because she really is very afraid of giving people the power to hurt her.
Yeah, she makes herself an outcast even among outcasts and takes pride in doing that, even though she might be a little bit happier if she did make friends.
Exactly. She's very it's a combination of genuinely being someone who doesn't gel with a lot of people, but also being a person who's very intent on rejecting others before they can reject her, and that's very human. That's very teenage. That's very it hits home, and I think a lot of there's a reason a lot of kids are really attached to this show. And I think that's a big reason. I think they really feel that kinship.
And I think what's really great about the way the Wednesday Addams character works, like in a narrative sense, not like in the grand scope of the plot, but like on a micro scene level, it's a win if she like, you know, is mean to somebody and owns them, but it's also a win if she softens a little bit. Like it works both ways. So all the show has to do is vary what happens in those scenes throughout, and you get this complicated picture of a girl who wants to push everybody away, but naturally does want kinship and family because she wants to be respected.
My number one critique of the show, and I hope they leave this behind when they move on to season 2, and this is the case with most fantasy storytelling, this world is not a good vehicle for social commentary.
Yeah, maybe you don't, you know, use Outcast as a abstract group label to stand in for any kind of oppressed group
Exactly.
ever.
Don't use the outcasts to stand in for real world oppression.
It's the same thing with like Ruby, Star versus the Forces of Evil, fucking Bright, which is one of the worst ones.
Yeah, a show that I also really like that's not very, that's kind of messy, but I like it, is that show Carnival Row. Anytime you use a fantasy group, a group of like fantastical creatures to stand in, fantasy racism never works. It never works as a metaphor.
Yeah, oh, there was that really bad Heroes reboot that did this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure there's tons of bad runs of X-Men that don't play the nuanced line as well as the good ones do.
The Addams Family have always, like, especially since the 90s, like, brushed up against a world that does not understand them and wants them to conform and wants them to change and conform.
Yeah, if I may speak as like sort of like, you know, second generation Italian immigrant, the Addams Family story always felt to me like very specifically immigrants who have a different culture and are having to live among like people as fish out of water. When you extrapolate that into like all bigotry, it kind of loses its specificity, and as a result, the social commentary falls flat.
It falls flat. It makes sense that a small town adjacent to a school full of like weird kids, that like, it makes sense that the townspeople would be shitty to these kids. It makes sense that there would be this like bias and this like bullying and that shit. I'm not saying that's like a problem that needs to be scrapped. It's just
put a different lens on the conflict. The conflict that's already there, just put a different lens on it.
Not only does it not work, but I think it actually just like, it is to the detriment of both the show and the point they are trying to make, to try to pretend like being an outcast, quote unquote, the terminology they use on the show, is analogous in any way to being any sort of real world oppressed group.
Yeah, it sounds like when people from like the intellectual dark web say actual diversity, and they mean like, you know, people who disagree on like fiddle-faddle laws rather than like, you know, whether people have a right to personhood.
Ditto, there is one, God, I have to name this scene because it made me so irritated, and thankfully they dropped this plotline immediately, but it made me very annoyed, and I was like, this is a messy metaphor that makes no sense and is a waste of time, and that is the subplot with Enid and her like werewolf transformation stuff, which to me read as a metaphor for her being a late bloomer, or perhaps even having like a learning disability.
And that's how it feels in like 90% of the show.
Yeah.
Outside of that one exchange.
Exactly. And so then there's this one weird exchange where her mom's like, send you to this, you know, summer camp where you can learn how to, like, if anything, her mom sending her to a werewolf summer camp to make her become a better werewolf is more analogous to something like a fat camp. And then they're like, conversion camp? And I'm like, that's not what this metaphor ever was. Why did we just use that charged language?
The thing is, my initial read of the scene was that Enid was saying something a little bit hyperbolic because she's kind of a dramatic teenager, but then her mom used that exact language to like say like, yeah, it's a conversion worked well for our relatives. And it's like, what is this?
Well, particularly
like,
because
ew.
that metaphor doesn't work because Enid is a werewolf. Like, it's not like Enid is something else and her mom is trying to make her aware. You know what I'm like? That metaphor just doesn't work through and through and through. Like, one, it's weird to do it in general. Like, being a werewolf is not being a queer person. It's like I said, it's more analogous to being a late bloomer or something like that, where her mom sees her as behind. It's like offensive and messy, and and thankfully it's one scene that is immediately forgotten about for the rest of the show.
Yeah, no, it feels very out of keeping with the rest of what they do with that character and the show in general.
It was just very weird. But that out of the way, reading this show as what I enjoyed about it, which is goth teen detective show at magic school, That I like.
Yeah, and the mystery solving element of it didn't need to happen at a school necessarily, but the school is the perfect like in-universe justification to bring a lot of like strange weirdos together. Who all have like different unique quirks, can all fill different roles in the plot, and it also is perfectly foreshadowed by Wednesday's like first line in the series, where like schools are kind of these places where like a bunch of adolescents are forced together, surrounded by like, you know, authority figures who might not have their best interests in mind.
The Addams family operate in a fish out of water like setting. That's their whole deal. So I was like, what's the point of having Wednesday and then putting her in a school full of weird kids who are just like her? And they did a pretty good job of skirting around that by being like, these are kids with like powers and stuff, but most of them are just normal teenagers still.
Yeah, none of them have like, you know, thrown piranhas into their like normal high school pool.
She's at magic school, but most of the kids at magic school are essentially just ordinary teenagers just with powers and things. And so Wednesday still has that sort of fish out of water feel to her. It's that thing that you said. It's like that kind of fun, like even among the quote unquote outcasts, she still doesn't know how to relate to people really. The only people she really relates to, first at least, are people who also feel like they don't fit in. She relates to Enid, who is a werewolf who can't run with the pack because she hasn't fully transformed yet. She relates to Eugene, whose only friends are his bees.
Yeah, which is another example of like, yeah, as much as she tries to be like, you know, really like, you know, scary and tough, she is the champion of the downtrodden.
She is.
And throughout this first season, growing into that role is like her major character arc.
I'm not going to name names, but like a favorite thing to do on the internet when a female character is good at a lot of things is to call her a Mary Sue. And I just wanted to say, as someone who was pretty entrenched in the fanfiction world growing up, one of the key elements of a Mary Sue character archetype, even though that phrase has become something that barely means anything anymore, is that everyone loves them.
And that is quite the opposite.
Yeah, I was going to say, cannot emphasize enough how much people don't like Wednesday.
And she doubles down to make them dislike her more. She plays these like games.
Even the people that want to like her, like Enid, are like, you make it so hard to get close to you. You make it so hard to be your friend.
If people want to find out whether a character is a Mary Sue, look at what the show is actually challenging them on. Not the things they're good at, not the number of things they're good at, but where the show is making them struggle.
Also, Wednesday has fatal flaws that really like play into the story. In fact, even one of the things she's best at, which is solving mysteries and like solving puzzles and things, she gets so caught up in like her buying into her own hype, basically as a detective, that she gets it really wrong and it almost kills her.
That kind of personality generates false leads just by its very nature. Yeah. If you're paranoid of everybody, you know, you're going to have to work double time, put that intelligence to work to actually find out who's the real lead.
So I would love to, I was going to say, we keep saying magic school. Let's talk about the setting. Let's talk about Nevermore Academy and how if I were a 13-year-old girl watching this show, I would want to go there so bad.
The thing that sold me on Nevermore, and it's just like one line, is that Wednesday Addams quotes Edgar Allan Poe and then says, the most famous Nevermore graduate. And I'm like, yeah, yes.
I love that because the implication of that is that Edgar Allan Poe had some sort of supernatural creature. Or like if he wasn't a supernatural creature, he was some sort of like supernaturally affiliated. He had powers.
I mean, he could have been a Wednesday, like a Wednesday Addams, just a very gloomy, smart person.
Wednesday does have one notable thing as well, which I also appreciate, something they added to the lore of the show, which is that she has visions.
You're so right. You're so right. And those like played in some very interesting ways throughout this.
And something I really like is it's a very helpful power, but the show goes out of its way to say it cannot always be trusted. It cannot always be taken at face value. Morticia warns her about this. She says, like, these kinds of visions, you can't always trust them. They're not always exactly what you think they mean.
Future visions are such a good power for a mystery show because you can give just enough bits and pieces of information for the audience to think something. Then Wednesday could think something completely different about it. Or she could think what we think, and we were both wrong.
It tricked me. It tricked me so bad. I was embarrassed. I was like, this show is for children, like, and it tricked me.
Yeah, what I love about the mystery that plays out alongside this, and I don't know how much we're going to spoil.
I don't want to spoil the mystery.
When all of the pieces of this mystery are laid out, the timetable, the false leads, like everything that occurs, it all adds up really, really well.
Yeah.
One of my favorite bits of this, like one of my favorite bits of foreshadowing for favorite, and I won't name any of the characters' names, but during the dance, there is a lingering shot of one character after they interact with another character that I'm like, that is the oddest, strangest directing choice. Why would they do that? And then it was the key to everything.
Amazing.
It was the key to literally everything.
That's so good. I didn't even notice. I'll have to go back and look for that.
It weirded me out the first time I was watching, and then I was like, oh shit, that's where this was heading.
Also, it's been memed to death, but god damn, I love the fucking dance scene. I think it's so cute.
The dance is amazing. It's so fun.
It's so funny and silly and cute. And anyone who's like, oh, why is there a dance sequence is a fake Addams Family fan, because dancing is a huge part of the Addams Family cinematic universe. Both of the 90s Addams Family movies had prolonged dance sequences. The first one has the mamushka, and then the second one has the tango with Morticia and Gomez. Dancing is a feature in the Addams Family, and as a family, they love to dance.
And either way, it's very entertaining if you have a heart.
Jenna Ortega said that she watched a lot of footage of old industrial goth club dancing from the 90s to kind of get the style, and that made me. I thought that was very cute.
Oh, that's adorable. It's such a combination of so many different choices.
It's very good.
That just come together to a wonderful, wonderful mid-season performance.
I think Jenna Ortega is fabulous. I really loved her in everything I've seen her in. Actually, I've really enjoyed her. I've never seen her turn out a bad performance. I loved her in X. I loved her in Scream. I loved her in You. I really enjoy her. But I specifically love in Wednesday, having seen her in these other performances where she's much more warm and kind of friendly. It's very delightful to see her be just kind of weird and off-putting.
I just love how weird they let this character be.
She's so weird.
She's just always interesting.
She's so weird. And did you notice she never blinks? I did.
Shit, you know what? Yeah.
When she's talking, she never blinks.
I mean, I definitely noticed the death glare throughout the show. She does an amazing death glare.
Jenna Ortega, man, I think she's fabulous. And I could sing her praises all day long, but you mentioned, and I mentioned, supporting cast of characters.
I absolutely love Enid as a supporting character.
Enid is my daughter.
She is so, perfect for the role that they put her in, because, you have to have, a happy, bubbly, sort of normal person to play off of Wednesday. And even though Enid's a werewolf, she does fulfill the role of being a very normal teenage girl.
Something I enjoy is Enid is the protagonist of a very different show. A YA book series about a girl who finds out she's a werewolf is, to me, you know what I mean?
The iconic window pane design of their dorm room,
so
where Enid's
cute.
side is all painted and colorful and Wednesday's is nondescript because she didn't do anything with it. It's throughout the whole show, you see that and you see them talking in front of it, you see establishing shots of it. It just always reminds you of the relationship between these two characters and how they're opposites, but they work.
I'll tell you when I knew that I loved Enid, just at her whole character design, her whole everything, was when she did her little rainbow claws. I was she's so cute.
I absolutely love that a character who is a werewolf, is a specific type of mythical creature, has an affinity for an animal that is nothing like what her mythical animal is. She likes cats.
She loves kitty cats.
In the boat race, her team is modeled after cats.
And to be fair, all of the boat race teams are also modeled after Edgar Allan Poe stories, so they're the black cat.
Yeah, but it's an extension of her saying don't mess with this kitty, she's got claws.
Yeah, and she dresses up as kitties for it. I just love her. She's so cute. But I love her character design. The second I saw her hair, the pink in her hair and her little rainbow
super
nails.
Pastel.
Oh, and she likes to knit. She made them snoods. She made the snoods.
Every bit as much as Jenna Ortega puts into Wednesday this kind of very deadpan, very serious vibe, Enid balances that out perfectly. I don't know the actress, but she does a great job.
I've never seen her before. I think she's adorable. Occasionally Enid's dialogue is not my, of all the character dialogue, I find Enid's dialogue to be the most routinely the one that made me go, I don't know about that. But she is really lovely, and I find her so charming and endearing, very much specifically endearing. There's several scenes where whenever Enid gets her feelings really hurt, it literally looks, I'm this is if you kicked a puppy. She looks so sad. My heart hurts so much.
Yeah. I think what's really great about the actress's performance here is that like anytime there's like, a strong negative emotion or like, she's really stressed out about something, her face tells the whole story.
Just like Jenna Ortega's face doesn't fucking move, although I will say Jenna Ortega is the queen of the micro expression in this show because she has a very deadpan face, but her eyes are always so communicative. But yeah, Bianca?
Oh my goodness. she is so good. She is like the perfect shonen rival to Wednesday Addams.
I also love, by the way, one of my favorite tropes in the world, which is they're rivals because they're so similar, and then toward the end of the season, we're like, we are pretty similar. Maybe we could be almost friends. And I'm like, maybe you could be almost friends.
Yeah, I love how their relationship builds a little bit more towards them because they both needed to learn the same thing about each other, is that it's okay, like, to share the spotlight.
It is.
To be the most competent person in the room. Even though the contact lenses they put on all the sirens kind of threw me for a loop for a bit, Joy Sunday is so pretty.
She's
beautiful. Just so pretty. Oh my goodness.
She's so stunning. Also, I was going to say, speaking of her being a siren, one of my favorite little pieces of lore is how they handle the sirens. I think they're very interesting. The fact that there are these people that essentially she wears like a necklace that dampens her power because otherwise she can't trust that people are responding to her organically because sirens in this world have this inherent like persuasiveness and ability to talk people into doing things.
I thought that was so cool, like just on a conceptual power level for someone in a mystery story and a supernatural story to have that ability is really good, but also just the fact that they included sirens at all among like, werewolves and vampires and like a lot of these other like more common fantasy creatures that are at the school. The fact that they made these kind of combination mermaids and the actual sirens of Greek mythology and they made them a major clique in the school, it gives the show such an identity.
Also, the show is willing to, and I'm excited to see it do more of reckoning with the kind of inherent, like the implied horror of how sirens work in this universe, because that's a very frightening amount of power for someone to have. Without getting deep into spoilers, it is very obvious. The show's willing to reckon with how well that could quickly and easily that can be used for evil.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's fascinating, the implied world building of this show.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we get the, major cliques of, vampires and sirens and werewolves, but we also get, the odd character like Ajax, who is, Enid's crush. Yeah, who's, a gorgon. He's got the Medusa hair.
He's got his Medusa hair. As soon as I saw his hat, I was like, oh, he got snakes under there.
And then the little one peeks out, and you're like, oh, vindication.
He's got snakes under there. I love Ajax. I have but one note, and that is simply that I have so much trouble watching Enid and believing that she is anything but a lesbian. But there's also room for that in season 2, and Enid could very well be bisexual. She certainly dresses like she is, and I say that as a bisexual woman.
Yeah. The townies getting involved in this too. Tyler and his dad are both really, really compelling characters, and their proximity to each other in the narrative makes for such an interesting tension because Tyler's dad is a cop, he's suspicious of the school, he's hunting down a monster. Meanwhile, Tyler is, interested in Wednesday, and he, runs the local coffee shop, so he interacts with all the kids and teachers.
Another character that has a lot of promise to me that also grew a lot over the season is I really like the mayor's son.
Oh, yeah. Him and his, little pilgrim group who work at the Pilgrim World.
But now he's, pulling away from them, which I think is a lot of fun. He and Bianca have that kind of kinship now.
Yeah, I loved all the little moments where they had the small town vibe. The recurring gag of Tyler just knowing everybody's coffee order is very funny
cute.
To me.
Also, the Pilgrim World shit really hit me hard because it's not in my town, so I'm not doxing myself here, but I'm from an area of Virginia that is not especially far from Colonial Williamsburg, which is a colonial historical village. It still has the people churning butter and there's horse-drawn carriages, and it has the old buildings and stuff. Again, I'm not from exactly there, but close enough that I went growing up a few times. And so the vibe of Pilgrim World was so close. I was like, oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, as a New England boy, you don't got to tell me twice. We are basted in that culture like a bunch of turkeys.
Also a brilliant little holdover of Wednesday Addams' character continuity from the 90s movies is her being staunchly anti-colonialist. I saw a couple people on Twitter who, again, are fake fans, be like, oh, why is Wednesday doing all this, saying all this woke shit? And I'm like, did you see the Addams Family Values where she monologued about how the Pilgrims were evil and then burned down a racially insensitive Thanksgiving play? Because I did.
Also, smart teen girls who are anti-authority also tend to, like, be woke. Deal with it.
Yeah. One of the things I used to quote was the monologue Wednesday. As a child, I was obsessed with that movie. The monologue Wednesday does when she improvises in the play, and she's like, for all these reasons, I have decided to scalp you and burn your village to the ground. And then she burns down the set and the camp.
Yeah.
It's just good to me.
Oh, another character that we absolutely have to mention because such a beacon of motherly protective power is Gwendolyn Christie's character, the principal of the place.
Sorry, mommy. Sorry, mommy. Sorry, mommy.
I'm going to get lost in a theme park, so she'll find me.
But I'm also a little scared of her because she is a little scary sometimes. But I love her.
That's the amazing thing about this character is that you can both believe her as like, you know, this very benevolent figure who like wants, you know, the best for everybody there. But also she is the authority. And Wednesday Addams is an anti-authority character. So naturally,
they're going to clash.
They're going to butt heads. Even if Jenna Ortega would have to jump twice her height to butt heads with Gwendolyn Christie.
It's true. Gwendolyn Christie's so tall. She's so tall. Anyway, excuse me, what was I saying?
She does excellent work in this.
She and whenever she and Jenna Ortega have a scene together when they're doing that headbutting, it's so much fun to watch them face off because they really are such powerhouse performers. It's a blast. She makes a great principal. I think she's so much fun. Want to give a shout out to one of my faves, Rikki Lindholm, who I love whenever I get to see her, who plays the therapist that Wednesday sees for her court-mandated therapy sessions.
Lots of fun scenes with her.
Yeah, Rikki Lindholm is such a fun performer, and it's always... I've really liked her since her Garfunkel and Oates, like early Garfunkel and Oates days. Rikki Lindholm is one half of a comedy songwriting duo called Garfunkel and Oates with Kate McCucci. And it has been wild to watch her go from being someone who sings novelty songs about blowjobs and about handjobs, which I do love. I love that song. It's very funny. But to going from that to being in like really big projects like Knives Out and like this, it's really cool to see because I think she's a really fun performer who I've loved since Pushing Daisies, by the way. And she has this very like a lot of the whole world of Wednesday. The reason it works is because it's so heightened. And she has that kind of, just like the actress who plays Enid, this very animated, like heightened kind of cartoonish look to her. And I just think she works very well. I am very lukewarm on most of the members of the Addams family aside from Wednesday in this show. Pugsley's fine. He's just a little boy. I really like Luis Guzman. I'm still not sure about his Gomez. I need to see more of it. I really don't care for Catherine Zeta-Jones as Morticia. It's not her fault. Angelica Huston's a hard act to follow. Or Angelica Houston or Huston, I never know how to say it, is a hard act to follow. But I'm not crazy about Catherine Zeta-Jones as Morticia. But there's one Addams we see in this show who I think knocked it out of the park.
Oh my God.
And that is Fred Armisen's Uncle Fester.
When he shows up, I was like, yes. Every line he does is some kind of like weird comedic morbid thing.
It's so much fun. It's also such wonderful characterization we get for Wednesday because when he shows up, it's the first and only time the whole show we see Wednesday smile with her teeth. A full smile, a real smile, like a genuine, actual, happy, delighted smile because she loves her uncle. And it's not hard to see why. He's wild. I fucking love him.
Yeah, no, Uncle Fester, absolutely a standout character appearance in this show. And it happens when, like, we, the audience, really in need of a win, of something good happening. Boy, does it, like, brighten up the entire episode that he's around for.
Oh, I also love that there are different versions of Uncle Fester. I have a lot of, obviously, I mentioned I love the 90s movies. I have a lot of affection for Christopher Lloyd's Uncle Fester. But I really love that this version of Uncle Fester is a little bit younger, a little bit more like spry, and also is canonically a bank robber.
He's a bank robber who was trained in Tibetan monasteries and is fully electrokinetic in this without the need of like external devices.
I love him so much. What a guy. And like I said with her and Gwendolyn Christie, and honestly, Jenna Ortega is really good at having great chemistry on screen with people, but God, it is so much fun to watch them interact. They are so fun together.
And I think, again, that is what makes this whole thing work. This really ends up being a show that is carried so heavily by its character work.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, we didn't even talk about, there's an important character who never speaks a word, but gives an also incredible performance, and that's Thing.
I love Thing!
I love that. I watched a behind the scenes video about this, and Thing was played by a magician because they wanted someone who could do really dexterous handwork. So the guy who plays Thing has never done acting before. He's never done on-camera acting before. He's a stage magician and a sleight of hand artist. And it's basically they have him in like a morph suit and then just his hand sticking out.
Oh, that's so much fun. The thing is, Thing is a character with a ton of agency in the plot.
Yeah. Thing makes friends with Enid, which is delightful.
Yeah, that's the thing. That is the oh my God.
That's the thing.
Thing is a wonderful addition to the cast. Always great. This creepy little hand familiar. Beloved by all.
He's a guy. Also, one last thing, because I don't even know where to fit this, but it's just an important piece of backstory that made me feel very big emotions, which is that we learned the last time Wednesday ever cried. Do you remember this?
Oh, yes. That's an incredible moment. I think that's even in the pilot.
That scene, I was very upset. They killed her pet scorpion.
It so informs her character too, because that is just one more moment of her being unable to protect somebody. And so because of that, she wants to be closed off, but she also wants to protect. It's just on every conceivable level, every choice they make with Wednesday Addams' character in this fully reinforces the person who would be the champion of the outcasts.
Yes, and that's the theme of the season, is her coming into that protective role and learning that it is okay to put herself in the position of loving people enough that it might end up hurting her. Some of the people, I will not say all the people, but it is some of the people that she learns to open herself to and let occupy a place in her life that ends up, keeping her alive. I am happy it was renewed because I really am looking forward to seeing what they do with it when it's been given a little room to breathe and grow. It could end up that season 2 comes out and it's terrible and I end up eating my words, but
At least we had this much, and I'm, optimistic for what comes next.
Jenna Ortega said specifically, and I hope they give her a little bit of creative input here because she's so much of what makes the character work. Jenna Ortega said she would love to see it be a little bit scarier, a little bit bloodier, and a little bit gayer, and I think if it incorporates all 3 of those, then season 2 will be a treat.
Oh, hell yeah. You heard the woman. Do it. Do it, Wednesday creators.
Wednesday herself said so. Her word is law.
You gotta listen to her. This has been super fun. Thanks for coming on again, Addison.
Thank you for having me. I love to be here.
And as for the rest of you, we'll be seeing you in the near future.